Hello. Today's reading is taken from Psalms chapter 46. God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though the waters roar and foam and the mountains quake with their surging. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy place where the Most High dwells. God is within her, she will not fall. God will help her at break of day. Nations are in uproar, kingdoms fall. He lifts his voice, the earth melts. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Come and see what the Lord has done, the desolations he has brought to the earth. He makes wars cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the shields with fire. He says, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord Almighty is with us, the God of Jacob, our fortress." This is the word of the Lord.
Good morning. My name's Colin Flenley. I'm a member of the congregation at Aldridge Parish Church, and I've been given the challenge to talk to you today about Jesus, COVID, and our mental health. On the 23rd of March, the UK fell silent. For many, this was a peaceful time, a quiet time, a chance to get out in the countryside and walk across the golf course. The weather was lovely. People were out exercising on their bike. They were spending times with their family, re-engaging with nature, talking to others. It was a time for many to enjoy the peace and quiet. But to others, there was isolation. There was loneliness. There was definitely an increasing existing anxieties, depression and low mood. I saw that myself as a doctor. To others, there was the onset of anxiety and depression, even to the extent of suicide. COVID itself was producing some very weird physical and mental symptoms. We are, as Christians, are taught to tackle life's problems through prayer, faith and other spiritual practices. But we often wrestle hard with how to understand our battle with depression, with anxiety. It's not something that typically just goes away if you pray hard enough. So where does the Bible talk about depression? There are many examples of mental health problems in the Bible. We only have to look at the Old Testament. The Psalms, many of people believe that the Psalms were written by David, showing his emotions. In Psalm 143 verse 4, he talks about the spirit growing faint within him. He says, "My heart within me is dismayed." Elijah, in 1 Kings verse 27, chapter 21. Elijah made King Ahab understand how much evil the ruler had done to the Lord. Ahab fasted, he slept in mourning clothes and walked around depressed. In 1 Samuel 16 to 20, King Saul was so depressed he sank into fits of despair and rage. The entire book of Lamentations is a poetic expression of the Hebrews' deep, unabashed depression after the fall of Jerusalem, with no hope of redemption or rescue. Other Bible characters wrestled hard with depression and mood disorders. Moses, he had a dark wilderness period of his own, several times over the course of his long life. You see, God had tasked him with leading Israel out of Egypt and into the promised land, a job Moses didn't want, yet God insisted. Again and again he would do as God told him, only to face opposition, complaint and rejection from his people, who were dissatisfied and scared. At one point, after the people railed against him in the desert, Moses cried out to the Lord, "I cannot carry all these people by myself. The burden is too heavy for me." Then there's the prophet Jeremiah. He was rejected and mocked by his people. He was poverty-stricken and deeply lonely. He struggled with depression throughout his days. At one of his lows, in Jeremiah 20 verse 14, he cursed the day he'd been born. Job was despondent after he lost everything he held dear. He lost his 7 sons and 3 daughters, his servants and livestock, his wealth and his physical health. Jonah, the reluctant prophet who ran from God's call before spending 3 days in the belly of a fish, he became bitterly and angrily depressed after his ordeal over God's decision to spurn Nineveh. And then we turn to the New Testament. We all know about Apostle Paul's thorn in his flesh. We don't really know what this was. It could have been a physical, emotional, or a spiritual affliction. Judas Iscariot was so overcome with guilt and pain over the wrong he did in betraying Jesus that he hung himself. And then there's Jesus. Was Jesus depressed? Probably not. I certainly don't think so. But he had his low moments. He expressed his emotions. Look at the time he was at the temple when he turned over the tables of the moneylenders and those selling animals. He was angry. In the desert, where Jesus had fasted for 40 days and 40 nights before being tempted by the devil, he showed his emotions. And when he was on the Mount of Olives the night before he was crucified, he prayed to his Father in Luke 22. "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done." Then an angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him, and being in anguish, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. So there's many examples of depression, anxiety, emotional turmoil in the Bible. So how can we, as Christians, deal with how we feel at the moment? It looks like we're certainly on the upward curve of the second wave of this pandemic. It's not going to go away. It's something I think we're going to have to learn to live with. The problem now is that the nights are drawing in, winter's coming. We're probably not able to get out as much as we were during the initial lockdown. So we need to protect ourselves. We need to be aware of how we feel. The problem is, all too often as Christians, we're afraid to ask other people how you feel. We're afraid as Christians to say that we feel anxious, we feel depressed. We feel guilty about that. We shouldn't. Definitely we shouldn't. Yes, if we ask somebody, how are you feeling? We need to be prepared to hear the answer. Well, actually, I'm not too good today. Actually, I've had a bad few weeks. We need to be able to sit alongside one another, particularly during this time. We need to look out for those of us who are alone, those of us who've been recently bereaved. We have those extra things which other people don't have. We have the armour of God. We have the power of prayer, although we struggle, because depression is not something that simply goes away if you pray hard enough. And we do have each other. So what can we do? Well, at a family and friend level, obviously, we need to be looking out and talking to each other. There's various self-help aids, and one of the ones which I recommend to people, if you're a techie and you've got a mobile phone, smartphone, is the Headspace app. This is recommended by the NHS, and that teaches relaxation techniques. And there are several other similar apps available. At a professional level, locally, there is talking therapies. That's a telephone line which I can give you later. And in fact, some of this information I'm going to try and get posted on the weekly notice sheet. But talking therapies, you talk one-to-one with a trained counsellor about anxiety, about depression. There's your GP. Many people feel that their GP surgery is closed. Well, it's not, I can assure you. Yes, the doors are on closed, but you through the intercom you can still gain access through telephone calls. You can still gain face-to-face consultations. And your GP may, if they feel that you're low enough, if they feel that you're depressed enough, they may talk about medication and offer you medication. Now, sometimes Christians express concerns over taking medication, antidepressants, but Jesus, in his life and ministry, made it clear that healing and seeking healing is a good thing. He also acknowledged that the sick need a doctor. In Matthew 9, verse 12, he said, it is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. And we, as Christians, we've got the Bible and the power of prayer. In Matthew 11, verse 28, it says, come to me, all of you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Recently, it's been the Mental Health Day or Mental Health Week. And coinciding with that, the Church of England have produced a leaflet called Supporting Good Mental Health. And again, I'll put the link for that on the notice sheet. This pamphlet and information, which is available in a hard copy or online, lays out 13 separate days looking at bereavement, looking at loneliness, looking at how we can eat healthily, rest and sleep. And it links it with Bible passages, and it also gives some self-help tips at the end. And I just wanted to touch on 3 of those days. The first one is living in isolation. Which is very significant for today, isn't it? Self-isolation, it says, is much talked about as a way of protecting ourselves and one another from coronavirus. The problem is that isolation can be a cause of anxiety, fear, and depression. It goes on to say, it's easy to say you are not alone. God is with you, when we reply to somebody about feeling alone. It's not easy to live with isolation from the warmth of human company. However, isolation is not really or only about how many other people are in the room or house with us. It has more to do with who is in our hearts and our minds, and how we may reach beyond the confines of rooms and homes to connect with those we love. And it goes on to talk about a prayer of isolation. On day 10, it talks about worry. And to say to somebody, don't worry, is easy to say. It's impossible to get through life without worrying, unless we care for nothing and no one. The trouble is, well, the important thing is, it's what we worry about and what we do with our anxiety. And that's the thing that matters in God's kingdom. And it goes on to discuss a meditation that can be done. And then the final one I want to talk about was day 4, which they talk about, how are you? How are you? Have you ever found yourself not knowing what to say when somebody cheerily said, how are you? And I've talked about that earlier on. Perhaps you felt awful, but didn't like to say. The trouble is, by ignoring somebody who's lonely, depressed, anxious, we confer stigma. We confer stigma on those who suffer from mental ill health, or simply those who give honest emotional replies to everyday questions. We need to respond. We need to be prepared to respond. Well, if you felt that you've been affected by anything I've talked about today, then please feel free to message me. As I've said, I'll also arrange for some links to be put on the notice sheet. I just want to finish with a prayer which the Archbishop of Canterbury posted on Facebook and other social media on World Mental Health Day. He first of all said, remember John 1:5, the light shines in the darkness and the darkness did not overcome it. And his prayer, loving God, be with all who struggle with their mental health and all who support them. Give each of us faith to see beyond the troubles of this time, hope to face this day and every day, and a true sense of your love for all your people, revealed in Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Thank you.